Welcome to Tom's World. In this video game development series, we take a look at the amazing Unreal 4 editor. Epic Games has earned near legendary status among developers and gamers for their engine's photorealistic graphics. No wonder why so many video games are developed with Unreal. But when it comes to building video games, whether you're a professional or hobbyist, few other development tools match the versatility and accessibility of the Unreal 4 editor. While not earning the gushing accolades that the engine does, the editor gives developers a powerful tool to unlock the endless potential of the Unreal 4 game engine. Ever wonder how these astonishing video games are built? Then stick with us as we dive into the fascinating world of video game development. Welcome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. Well, we're going to have a look at the Unreal 4 engine. Now, anyone who's familiar with my channel knows that we did a whole series on the Doom 3 editor. And don't get me wrong, I love Doom 3. I love the Doom 3 editor. It's a great place to start if you're just getting into level design. But that technology is getting a little long in the tooth, and I thought it'd be kind of nice to transition to some newer technology. And certainly the Unreal 4 engine is cutting-edge technology. I mean, some amazing games have been built on it. Absolutely brand new AAA games. Some that come to mind are BioShock, of course Fortnite, very famous, Gears of War, which absolutely looked fantastic. And those were all developed on the Unreal 4 engine. And it's absolutely free, so anyone interested in, pursuing something professionally or even just as a hobbyist, you could download the Unreal 4 engine, which we'll look at in a moment. It's totally free, and in fact, if you're going to be developing a game, you don't even have to pay anything until you actually ship. So they're very, very encouraging, Epic that is, of people to use the engine and get developing on it. So we're going to have a quick look at it today. So if you haven't already downloaded it, you just go to the internet, and I usually just search Unreal 4, and you can just pop into their website, which is here, unrealengine.com, and it opens up this magnificently beautiful website, and we can just go down here and click that download. Now, I'm not going to do a step-by-step on how to download it and install it. You guys are smart. There's also lots of videos available there, so I'm not going to show that. Now, one other thing you want to download, you don't necessarily have to do it right away, but if you are going to be bringing in content, what you want to do is you want to, let's see here, it's the Epic Game Launcher that you want to download. And just make sure you go to the official site, which is right here. And just go in there, choose your platform, and then just follow the steps and download that as well. Create an account, it's free, it's fine. And it's really great. I believe it's necessary if you're going to download content, and that's the way we bring it onto our game. So that's another thing that you do want to download. So, all right, so once you have those two downloaded, now for the Unreal Engine, you get this little magnificent icon here. So we're just going to double click that, and it just takes a second to open. And this is very exciting. So this is brand new technology. Like I said, it was released in 2014. They've updated ever since, and it's absolutely, look, if you're into modding or game design or you want to learn how to make games, get this. It's free. Now, it's not a weekend project. It's not a week-long project. It does take some time to learn it, but stick with it, and you can do some magnificent things. So when we open it up, since I've already got projects in here, you'll see this little screen here, but more than likely you're going to get this screen. And look at all the different types of games we can develop. Now, these are sort of templates. You can certainly start with a blank map, but Epic kind of gets you going here with these templates. They put some assets in there to get you started. And you can see we can do a first-person game, a flying game. We can do puzzles, rolling, side-scroller, 2D side-scroller. We've got VR in here, advanced vehicle. Now, we'll look at these maybe later in different videos, but, and here's third-person, but I like to develop in first-person. So let's select first-person first. And indeed, you can work sort of visually based, but if you're a coder, you can go that route too. And just be aware that if you do want to code in C++, you do have to get the Visual Studio. But we're gonna work in here where it's just icons. So let's go to Blueprint. And I like to develop in first person. So let's go ahead and let's select that. That's fine. So that tells us this. And then here we just select whether we want to develop for desktop or console. We want to go, desktop console or mobile tablet. We'll go with desktop console. I'll go maximum quality depending on your computer, but we'll go maximum quality for now. And then you probably want the starter content, especially if you're trying it for the first time. What that gives you is a few different assets that you can play around with. So we want to do that. So let's name our project. And oh, another thing is too, is you can put it in whatever folder you want. I usually stash my stuff in a D drive, which I've got set up on my computer, and it puts it in a folder called UE4 projects. And you can name this. So let's just call this, I don't know, YouTube 1, let's say. Let's keep it simple. Hit enter. And, well, no, don't hit enter, hit create project. There we are. And it just takes a moment for the engine to pop open. YouTube editor 1. Okay, come on now. Okay, it just takes a few seconds. Now, what you're going to first notice is if you've opened up the editor that it probably the desktop looks a little bit different. Now, I've just set this up to the way I prefer to work, but I'm just going to do this to illustrate a point. One of the great features on the Unreal editor is that you can customize your desktop. And all we have to do is grab these little tabbies here. Now, I'm going to set this up with the way the actual engine just ships in vanilla. So we'll bring this guy over here, and you can see you can dock these, and Epic calls these slates. I'm not sure exactly why, but there it is. All right, and we can just sort of drag this. You kind of get the hang of this after you work with it for a little while, but kind of drag these into wherever you want it. Now I'm just trying to get the default setup here, so I believe it's this way. Yeah, the outliner up top, details there, and I do believe that the content browser goes down here. Okay, there it is there. And you can see how easy it is to customize your desktop. It's quite fantastic. Okay, what's going on here? I just want to bring this down. There we are. Now, it actually probably looks more like this. Okay, there it is. So we can see how easy it is to customize our desktop. And that's one of the great features. I mean, if you're working on 2 monitors, you've got lots of real estate to work with. But 1 monitor, you can kind of smoosh everything in. And this is how it looks when it ships. So maybe for this first video, I'll just keep it this way. That is, if people are tuning in, if they're new, they're going to be wondering why my desktop look different. So in this video, we'll just go with the vanilla setup. So there that is. Now people say, oh, you know, Tom, it's Unreal 4 is so hard to use. Well, watch this. Okay, so we just press this button here, play, and just a left mouse button, and there we are. We're inside the map. Just that simple. Now this is very rudimentary. Epic just gives you a few things. We can see we have some polygons here, some boxes with a little bit of physics. We've got a gun, we've got projectiles, we've got that obnoxious sound. We can jump, we have some controls, but it's very basic. We have no UI or HUD, we have no health bar, no points. This basically doesn't do anything. It just gets us started and gives us a sense of what it is. Beautiful skybox. But so it's not complicated getting in here and getting a feel of it. So now to get out of that, we can hit, well, escape key, and there we are back in the editor. So it's just that easy. Now, there is one concept we should talk about right off the top. If you remember in the Doom 3 editor, we always had to seal our maps. And you don't quite have to do it in the same way in Unreal. That is, you can see we have no roof here, and that's fine. There's no leaks. There's no problems compiling. But we kind of have to do a quasi-seal. And if we look in this little sandbox, we can see that Epic did kind of put 4 walls around this floor. And I just want to illustrate one point here about sealing in Unreal 4. So if we grab this brush and we move it up here, and I'm just going to save this real quick, and I'm just going to compile it actually. So I'll do a little video dissolve here. It just takes a few seconds to compile just to save video time. So just give me one moment. Okay, so it just takes a few seconds to compile and build the lights. So now we've got this compiled. So let's go back into it. And here's what I mean by sealing. If we don't have a wall, if the player falls off this floor, so you also have to have a floor on your map, you kind of fall into the void and you kind of get stuck. Now, I think older versions, you just keep falling and falling in infinity. And that's really easy to get out of, is just hit escape, and we're back in the editor here. So just be aware that it's not quite sealing a map, but you do want to have these borders in here that, you know, go on your floor. And that's quite important to do, you know, because you don't want to fall into the void and get stuck there all the time. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and compile it, and let's keep going here with our little journey on the introduction to the editor. So I'm going to just hit save, and I'm going to hit compile, and I'm just going to do a quick dissolve here to save some time. So let me go ahead and build this up, and we'll see you in a second. All right, so we're all set. Now, rather than going through each and every button and explaining it, that I think would make a boring video. The way I like to work is actually getting in here, doing things, and then kind of explaining the different functions and buttons as we go. Now, there's a billion commands in this game, but you can also see whenever you hover over anything, you do get a flyout that explains it. So that's really handy when you first start. But there are some fundamentals we should go over, and I just want to explain some of these, what do they call them, slates or or little dock windows here. So the first one we always want to hover around is this world outliner, and that's kind of a list of all the entities that we have on a map, and that kind of reminds me of the way Doom 3 works. When we hit the I key and it brings up a list of everything we have in the map, and this is just works like any other file listing. We can collapse the files, and basically another great feature of the Unreal Editor, we can search for things. There's always these little search bars. So for example, well, let's have a look here. This one's called cube. So say for instance we called something a cube. If we just type in cube here, it'll filter it and it'll show us all the cubes. So that's a really handy feature to search for things when we have a long list of stuff. And we'll see, we can search, we'll do this search a lot as we work in the Unreal Editor. So that's that. And one other interesting feature is we can actually hide things here too. So if we just click this little eye, we can hide things on our maps. This makes it a little bit easier to see things. But again, we can collapse this and kind of tidy it up. And we can see everything we have in the map. So that's that. Now this pane down here, details, if we do click on a static mesh, we can do a lot of controlling of this through this details window, and I'll show that in a minute, but basically everything has to do with that entity can be edited down here. And again, we're going to be working a lot in this pane here, this details pane, so good to know that one off the hop. So that does the world outliner and the details. Now over here we've got something called modes, and this is how we bring things into our map. For example, if we did want to bring in some geometry, we just click on that box and drag it in. That's simple. Now another key stroke that we want to know is Control Z for undo. That's really handy to know. Now if you do want to know the hotkeys, you can come up to here. And let's see if I can remember where it is. Let's see here, editor preferences, and if we go to keyboard shortcuts, we can see all the keyboard shortcuts here. We can customize them, obviously. Now there are lists online that give you all the different keystrokes, but you can see that basically anything you can assign. So that's kind of handy to have there. So let's just get out of that real quick. So this modes window is basically where we drag things in. We can paint things, we do our landscaping this way, we do our foliage this way, and then we can also edit our geometry on this window here. We'll look at this stuff more in detail in future videos, but for now let's just keep it light and simple and just kind of explain these different panes. So now the final one is going to be this content browser. You're going to work in here a lot, and this is where we get at everything. And you know, for example, if we go into blueprints, or if we go into well, let's see here, starter content, we can get to our materials files. So this is the way you set up your file folder structure, and it's kind of nice that it's in the editor. If you remember in Doom 3, we'd actually have to get out of the game, and we could go into Windows Explorer and set up our file folder structure. Well, this is nice because we can do it right in the editor. So that's actually a very, very convenient thing. You know, obviously Epic designed this with the user in mind to try to keep it convenient and simple. And again, if we can kind of get over the initial shock of the learning, eventually it really does go quite easily. So stick with it. As I said, it's not a weekend project. It's not a couple of days. You do have to stick with it. In fact, oftentimes people work in these engines for years, which I've been doing, and I kind of just get in here and play once in a while. So it does take some time to learn it. So that'll cover the windows and the panes. Just again, very simple to get started. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how we kind of move things around. Actually, let's have a look at how to get around the pane. Now you can see that I'm moving around here. So it can all be done through your mouse. Now if we right click on the mouse and we move the mouse left and right, we pan, and if we move it forward and backwards, we look up and down. Now there's a lot of videos online that explain all this stuff, but this is just to get started. Now again, kind of transitioning from other editors, your muscle memory might be a little bit differently. Obviously the hotkeys are going to be different, so it's going to take a little bit of adjustment, but you're going to get it in no time at all. So another thing is if we click both the mouse buttons and we go forward and backwards, we go up and down, and if we go sideways, it's kind of like a tracking motion like so. And then finally we can use our mouse wheel to sort of zoom in and out. So that gets us basically moving around the editor, and you can do it all with your mouse. There's no need to go to the keyboard, so that's extremely handy. So alright, so now let's look at kind of how we do things in the editor real basically. So if we select, say say this guy here, and if we go to our world outliner, we can see it's a static mesh, and we can hide it if we want, which we don't want to do. Now if we press our W key, we get these little gadgets. Now in Doom 3, all we had to do to move entities around was click them and drag them with our mouse. That's not the same way in Unreal 4. We have these little gadgets. So if we want to move stuff around, we can see that that's kind of dimensional, very straightforward. Just left mouse button and drag, and we can see that we can move this around. Very simple. Now, one other handy key is if we place an entity in the, or an actor as we call it in Unreal 4, into a map and we hit our end key, it drops it to the floor. So that's kind of handy to know. And again, our undo key. So now if we press our E key, we've got a rotation tool, and that's kind of handy too. It's very intuitive. All right, and it does snap, which is kind of nice, and we get our readout here. So if we want to go absolutely 90 degrees, we can see that there. So let's just undo that, orientate that in the proper way. Now, another thing I should point out is that, well, let's look at one other thing, and that's if we select that and we go to our R key, we've got a resizing tool here. So we can just grab those and resize. And if we click the middle one, it's proportional. So it kind of does it all at the same time. So it's kind of nice. Now, one other way we can adjust entities on the map if we click them is we can go down to our detail folder, and we've got our controls here. Let me just move this up real quick here so we can see it. And if we slide this up, we can see we can also rotate things here. We can scale them here. Well, I'll just show that real quick. Let's go 4 and enter, and we can see it resized it. So that's another way we can do it. And we can also change this into a movable or a static. And then we've got our other details here in terms of our materials, and we'll be in this window a lot. This is a details window, and gosh, look at all the things we can change on this one little entity. It's amazing, the customization. I always kind of consider the Doom 3 editor as kind of being, well, how should we say, automatic transmission. That is, it's very easy to use, but maybe not as controllable. Whereas the Unreal 4 engine would be kind of like a standard transmission, where it's a little more work, but it gives us much more control. So there's that gets us basically going. Now the final thing we wanted to discuss is static meshes versus geometry. Now we want to end up with static meshes in our map just because they optimize the best, but the first stage when we start to just block out our geometry, basically what we want to do is work in what well, it's as known as geometry in Unreal 4, or BSP. Now, one thing we should note is, for example, these are all static meshes. Now, if we click on that, we can see that it selects all 4 faces at once. Now, the drawback to static meshes, just off the hop, if we go into our starter content folder and we look at materials, and one other thing to consider is that in Doom 3 we used to call everything textures, where in Unreal 4 it's called materials. Now materials is basically kind of the overarching container, and within that we have textures, but basically we refer to textures as materials in Unreal 4, so good to know that. So one thing about static mesh is if say we grab this cobblestone texture, and it's very simple to apply, we just click it, left mouse button, drag it in, and unclick, and it drops it on there. So that's how easy it is to slap on a material. Now the only thing is, if we do scale this, we can see that it stretches. Now there is a way to fix that, and we'll look at that in a future video, but that's the one drawback to just using static meshes. It's a little bit more complicated with textures. That's why normally what we'll do is we'll texture a BSP rather than static meshes. So when we're just roughing in our map for the first pass and we're just laying in our geometry, we want to go over to our modes window here and make sure we have geometry clicked, and then we can just drag in, say, a box to begin with. Now if we select our material first and then drag in our box, it's going to apply the material. I don't want that. I just want to have the dev texture on there. So let me just deselect that. Let me drag in a box, and then we can see we get this dev texture. So let me just slide this up here so we can see it. And let's get a slightly better angle. Now we can see that when we select geometry, when we just left click it, it just selects the one face. And that's great because again, in static meshes, it selects all the faces. There is a way to do it, but just for ease, when we deal with BSP or geometry, it does select a single face. And that's really handy again when we're roughing things in. If you ever tries to texture, rough brushwork, we can see that really selecting faces is what we want. Now, if we do want to select more than one face, we'll left mouse button, so it selects one face. We'll hit Shift B, and then it'll select all the faces. So just that simple. Now let's go back into our material folder and say put on this stone texture, and there it is there. Now if we hit our R button and we scale, it will stretch the texture, okay? But it's really easy to fix that. All we have to do is come down here into our details menu, and we want to look at surface properties. We come down here to the scale, and we can see we can just go ahead and type in, say, 3 just to begin with, and hit apply. And it should it should change the thing. So I'm going to deselect it and reselect it. So there it is. And then we can adjust this. So let's put this to 2,002, and let's go, I don't know, 5, and let's hit apply. And then we can see it's that easy to adjust the texture size and the scaling. So very good to know. If it's not working, just deselect it, reselect it. I'm going to actually select one face, Shift B, select all the faces, go down to here, and if we say we go 0.5, and we'll go 0.5 here as well and hit apply. You can see that it changes the texture. So when you're blocking out your level, you want your textures nice. When we work with geometry, it's much easier to scale the textures in geometry as opposed to static meshes. We'll look at scaling materials in static meshes probably in a later video. But for now, again, we want to keep it simple. So there that is. Okay, so one last item that I did want to illustrate is just how simple it is to create a custom material. Now, we're not going to get too fancy on this today, and I just want to give a very, very general overview of it. Don't get discouraged if we fly through this really fast, but I just want to kind of give it a quick boo so when we come back to it later on, it's a little bit familiar to us, and I'm just going to get rid of that because it's so ugly. Okay, so what we want to do is create a custom material. Now, I'm going to show you how easy that is. Now, I'm going to come down here in our content browser, and I'm just going to create a new folder, and we can call that Tom's folder. Okay, you can put this folder anywhere, but again, we're just going to fly through it real quick. So let's click that, and let's go inside that by double clicking it, and I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to just create a material here really quick. And we could just normally the naming convention is M underscore, so I'll call it M underscore, not dash, underscore Tom material. All right, so let's go into that. Now, if we double click this, it's going to open up this, and this is visual scripting. Now, don't run for the hills, it's scripting. Now, Epic has made this really easy. Now, in the Doom 3 editor, we used to actually have to open up a text editor and go in and actually write kind of quasi C++ code. This is called visual editing, and it's kind of for dummies like me who kind of need things to look at other than text. And this is called visual-based scripting. Now, what we want to do here is create a custom material. And it's just this simple. We want to put in a node. So what we can do is we can right-click, and we'll just type in here. And as I indicated, we can search for things really easy. We want to go vector parameter, and it's going to filter it for us, and we're going to slap one of these nodes in here. All right, and I can call this base color. I can call it anything I want, but I'll call it base color for now. And we'll use the Canadian spelling. Hopefully I'm not putting off our American friends. There it is. And if we double click in here, we get this color picker. So I'm just going to actually leave it at neutral gray here. I'm going to hit OK. And then what we do is we just click this little guy here and we drag it into our base color and creates a connection there. And that's really all we need to do. So we're just going to go ahead and save that. And let's close this out. Now again, I'm moving through this really quick. Don't get discouraged. I don't expect you to follow along. I just want to show this to you really quick. So let's close that out, and we'll get into more visual scripting as time goes on. Now what we want to do here is we want to create an instance. So we just left click, left click, and then right click, and then we come up here, create material instance. And I'm just going to call this Tom Color 1. There, and I'm going to create one more. So left click, right click, create material instance, and I'm going to call this Tom Color 2 and click OK. Now I'm going to pop this guy open just by double clicking it, left mouse button, double click. Make sure this base color is selected there. And now I can pick a color, and let's pick a nice red color. Let's just slide that up, and this color picker makes it really, really handy. So there's a nice red color, so we'll leave that there, and we'll just close that out. We'll save it, and we'll close it out, and let's choose this second material instance. And again, make sure this base color is clicked. We'll go back into the color picker, and let's create a blue one. Yeah, that looks nice. Let's go up here, make it a little lighter, click OK. Let's hit save, and we'll close that. So we've just created basically 2 custom materials. Now let's deselect all these. Well, let's select the red one, and let's go ahead and drag in a box, and we can see that that material is already applied to that. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you, if you select something and you click Alt and you drag it out, you copy it. So I just want to copy those 2. Okay, there's those 2. Now let's hit our blue color here. Let's drag out a box, and we can see that we have a blue texture. And you saw how fast that was and how easy that is. And these material instances, again, we'll look at these a little bit more as we go. But for example, if we do have a bunch of these red boxes on a map, and I don't think I like that red color, for example, I want to change that red color. So if I go in here and I go into this color picker and say I go yellow, well, it's sort of limey green, and I click OK and I close that, we can see it changed it all. So you can see how easy it is. Now that's just a base color. We can add some normal maps on there, some roughness, some shine, and all the rest of it, and we'll look at that later. But that easy. And I would argue that that's probably easier even than the Doom 3 engine. So just a quick overview of how to create a custom material, and it takes about 2 seconds. And I've got these now prepared, ready to use anytime I want in my map. So let's see here. We're going to wrap up just by looking at a few resources here really quick. So let's just minimize out of this, and let's go back into the internet. And I do want to search for something called, let's see here. I think it's Unreal for Marketplace. Yeah, there it is there. Now you can get to the Marketplace through the editor. Let's see here. Up here, if you just click that, that'll take you there as well. But if we just go here, one thing you'll notice that there's inside the Unreal Engine, what's the assets in there are quite rudimentary. And after a while, after playing with it, you're going to realize you're sort of bumping up to the limitations, and you're saying, well, look, I want more static meshes, or I want more materials. Well, if you go to this Unreal Marketplace here, we can browse. There's all this content that we can download. Now, some of it does cost some money. Some of it's quite expensive, like this one's $90, but that gives us some amazing things. And some of it's as little as a couple of dollars. And what's actually great for guys like me is there's actually free content. Now, if we look at this Epic Games content, we pop that open, we can see that we can bring in all these amazing characters. Now, I know you're going to get excited, and you're going to probably want to bring these characters into your game, start messing around with them, but it's not that simple. Again, it's all very, very rudimentary. That is, if we do bring in a character, we have to build the animations, we have to build all the controls, and that would be for advanced builders or advanced modders that have experience in the Unreal 4 engine. So kind of hold off on that, but if we keep looking, there is some simple things we can bring in. Now let's have a look. What I'm looking for is one of these texture packs. Material packs. We don't want to call them textures. Okay, for example, if we look at this Soul Cave, and it's totally free, we pop that open and we start to look around with inside it. It usually gives us a little overview, and we can see all these different rock static meshes that we can bring into our game, and there's some more static meshes, there's some trees. So if we do want to add content, and we don't want to pay, just go to this marketplace and look for the free stuff, and you can bring in all kinds of stuff. And if you look around here, there's some great stuff in here. Not only materials, but there's characters, there's weapons, as we can see here, there's sounds, there's all kinds of cool stuff we can download. And again, it's all free. Well, this stuff is free. If we do want to, for example, purchase things, we can just browse. And where are we here? Let's go to the home page. Let's just browse. Well, we can browse by category. But for example, if we want to look at materials, we can look in here, and people have created material files, and some of them are, quite inexpensive, $9.99. And you can just download it, and once you have created an account, then it's very simple to do that. So that's one other thing we can do. Now, also there's all kinds of support for new people. And if we go into this Learn tab here, we can see there's documentation, and we can do a little bit of reading. So we can learn the Unreal Engine this way. Now there's forums online, there are lots of videos on YouTube. So again, it is a bit of a time investment, but there's all kinds of supports for you if you do want to get started in this. And see, they even have this online learning, which I assume might be a kind of a course that you log into and you can look at it. But if you're like me, you like to experiment. So, well, I think we're going to end it there. So I do want to thank you for watching. I really hope this gets you interested in the Unreal Engine. I think I'd like to do a couple more videos at least on this, just to kind of look at some more of the amazing things you can do in here. I hope you do follow along. If you're new at the Unreal Engine, I would strongly recommend to try it. It's totally free, and other than a time investment, really you can learn everything you need to know about creating AAA games right here on this free desktop in the Unreal Engine. So there it is. I think we'll leave it there. So as always, thank you so much for joining me. Take a moment, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. Otherwise, as always, thank you for joining me. Stay well and all the best.